Afternoon. Now I would like to call Dr. Balram Shukla, who is a professor of Sanskrit language in University of Delhi and currently a fellow of Indian Institute of Advanced Studies, Shimla. Professor Balram Shukla is an expert of Sanskrit language, but he speaks Persian much better than the Persian speakers themselves. And this is not something which I say. This is what Iranians say about him. Professor Shukla will be talking about lexical and morphological similarities between Sanskrit and Old Persian. So I would like to call you, sir. Please continue with your speech and your presentation of your article, sir.
بنام خداوند جانو خرد که زین برتر اندیش بر نگذرد. मेरी आवाज सुनाई पड़ रही है मुझे लग रहा है.
We can hear you, sir.
रियासत मोहतरम उस्ताद गिरामी व मुशफ़िक़ मन आगाए चंद्रशेखर, जनाब आगाए डॉक्टर एहसानुल्लाह शुक्रुल्लाही व असातिज़े दीगर हुज़्ज़ार गिरामी, بسیار سعادتمند خودم را میشمارم که در این سمینار منو برای ارائه مقاله‌ای دعوت کردن و और इस बात के लिए कि खुशबख्ती है मेरे लिए कि ये 100वीं सालगिरह जो आबिदी साहब की है उसके उपलक्ष्य में इस सेमिनार का आयोजन किया जा रहा है. मैं वर्षों तक फारसी डिपार्टमेंट में तालिब इल्म रहा हूँ फारसी का, और हमारे जितने असातीद हैं वो उन सबके असातीद उस्ताद जो हैं वो आबिदी साहब रहे हैं. तो फारसी सीखने के क्रम में उनके फजाइल, उनके लताइफ भी हम लोगों के एक तरह से गोया कि हमारे कोर्स का हिस्सा जैसे थे. तो मैं सौभाग्यशाली महसूस करता हूं अपने आप को कि इस उपलक्ष्य में मैं कुछ कहने जा रहा हूं. So the topic of my talk is lexical and morphological similarities between Sanskrit and Old Persian. The relationship between Old Persian and Sanskrit has been noted across cultural and linguistic domains. In spite of a huge gap of almost 1,000 years and remarkable upheavals, modern Persian still bears astonishing affinities with Sanskrit on phonetic, morphological, and other linguistic domains. This is possible because the root language of Sanskrit and Persian, which is modern Persian, share common origin. The intimate relationship between the root languages, those are Old Persian and Vedic Sanskrit, is the main basis of the observed linguistic affinity. The Iranian language forms a significant subgroup of Indo-Iranian language family, which is one of the essential divisions of the Indo-European languages. We can chronologically organize the Iranian languages into 3 periods: Old Iranian, Middle Iranian, and New Iranian. Old Iranian includes 2 languages of importance represented by old texts and inscriptions, including Old Persian and Avesta, respectively. These 2 constitute the oldest stratum of Iranian languages and hence called Old Iranian. Old Avestan is closely similar to the oldest Indic language, that is the language of the Vedas, and therefore should be dated to about the same time. Though many scholars are of the view that the tendency of Prakritization visible in Avesta indicates that its time must be much later after the Vedas. So the Prakrit languages are the languages which evolved after the Vedic languages in classical Sanskrit. So the tendency or features which our Middle Indo-Aryan languages bear is called Prakritization. And the same thing we find in Middle Iranian also. Middle Iranian, even Avesta and Old Persian languages also bear these features. So we find the features of Prakritization in these languages. And Prakritization is something which happened after Sanskrit languages. So the Avesta language and the Middle Persian must be dated to after the oldest Indo-Aryan, which is the Vedas, the earliest crust of the stratum of the Rig Veda. And there are so many instances of Prakritization in Persian, in Old Persian. So, however, several features of Prakritization can be produced to propose that the process of Prakritization should be borne in mind while studying the Indo-Iranian languages in general. So I propose that just as Sanskrit, we chiefly know Sanskrit and only talk about Sanskrit, but we should take the Prakrit languages also into consideration while studying linguistically these Iranian languages. So Avesta has been identified into Gothic Avesta and Younger Avesta, out of which Younger Avesta displays similarity with the Old Persian, and therefore it should be contemporary of the former. Its date may be first half of the first millennium BCE. The study of Avesta and Old Persian languages had immensely benefited each other. The importance of Avesta language for antiquarian and philological researches gained much wider acceptance, chiefly as a result of the attempts made by scholars to read cuneiform inscriptions found in Iran. Reading of these inscriptions in turn removed many prevalent doubts of that time relating to the genuineness of Avesta language. Sanskrit language, owing to its uninterrupted and intact copious literary tradition. So there are three very important features, specialities of Sanskrit language, because of which it is very much beneficial for linguistic study of Indo-European languages in general and Indo-Iranian languages in particular. And those three important things are its ancientness, its copiousness, and its uninterrupted tradition. So the lexical opulence of Sanskrit has frequently been referred to by the philologists to unleash, understand, and even reconstruct forms of its cognate languages. This paper aims at displaying affinities between these two languages on the lexical and morphological levels. I'm skipping some portions because of the paucity of the time. It endeavors to analyze similar forms of or structures in Sanskrit and Old Persian expressions through the use of morpheme constructions. It is known to all and sundry that Avesta language bears considerable affinity with Sanskrit to the extent that simply by applying some phonetic substitutions according to established law, it can be turned into intelligible Sanskrit. Similar attempts have also been made to show the multidimensional linguistic affinities between Sanskrit and Old Persian. Endeavors have also been undertaken to transcribe cuneiform inscriptions into Avesta. So the Middle Persian has been written in cuneiform inscription, which is said to be invented in the Darius's time, but modern scholars tried to write in Avesta script because Avesta script is more intelligible. Khurshedji, Rustamji Kama, Dr. Geldner, and Shapurji Kawasji Hodiwala, through their scholarship, have hugely contributed in this direction. So I'm going to show some words, interesting words found in inscriptions in Old Persian language, which bear a stark resemblance to Sanskrit derivatives on morphological and semantic dimensions. So can I share my screen? Please allow me to share my screen.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, thank you. Share. I think it is visible to all.
Yes, it is.
The first word I have undertaken is Kshayasiyo. And all these examples I have picked is from the Histan inscription of Darius. Darius in his inscription addresses himself as Kshayasiyo. And this is the, should I? The word Kshayasiya has been translated. This thing is the Din Dabire, which is the script of Avestan script. And unfortunately, now my PowerPoint presentation, some characters are missing. So I apologize for this. The word Kshayasiyo has been translated as the king. In Sanskrit rendering of the inscription, the word has been assimilated with Kshatriya of Sanskrit. The Kshatriya, this term is ubiquitous in classical Sanskrit. And there is nothing like Ksheta, but scholars have reconstructed in Sanskrit that in Sanskrit its form might have been like Ksheta. Because in Sanskrit, in Avesta, we find the word Kshayeto in the meaning of the king. The word, according to the Sanskrit grammarians, may be derived from the root kshi. So the conjugational forms we have in the Vedas, which means to dwell or to reign. This is a root frequently used in the Vedas. For instance, from the second hymn of 12th mantra of the second hymn of the Rig Veda, you can see Yah Shambaram Parvateshu Kshiyantam. So this Kshiyantam is the root out of which this Kshayasiyo is closely connected. Similarly, in Avesta, we find Yim, and this Yim is always coupled with an adjective. So generally, we don't find it alone. Yamakshiyeto. So it is a compound, but in later languages, the same phrase in later Iranian languages found as Jamshed. Jamshed, as Iranians would pronounce it. So Jamshed is would mean the Yama, the king. So it turned into a single proper noun. We feel that it is a single proper noun, but it is a compounded word. Two words are there, Yama and Kshayet. So in Pahlavi and modern Persian too, we find the word Shah. Shah is the most important and very popular word, which is direct evolute of this word. So, the Old Persian and Avesta have another important cognate word, that is Kshatra. Actually, the word is Kshatra, and in Sanskrit, in Old Persian or Avesta, we find it as Kshastra, because fricativeness is the thing which is abundant in Iranian languages. And in our Indic languages, Indo-Aryan, we hardly found any fricative stop. So we have fricatives. For instance, sho, so, ho, etc. are fricatives, affricates, but not stops. These are not stops. So that Persian languages, Iranian languages abound in it. So Kshastra is there, and which means kingdom or sovereignty or province. The evolute of this word shahr is abundantly used in medieval and modern Persian. This is why it is pronounced as shahr and not shahar. As in Urdu, we call it shahar, yeah, or in Hindi, we call it shahar. But actual pronunciation of this word is shahr, because it is closely connected with the kshatra. And tra, there is two conjuncts, and it is not with the vowel. So in Sanskrit, though the counterpart of this word is kshatra, and it prominently means the ruling class, who is kshatriya. But use of this word in compound kshatrapa indicates the existence of original meaning. About the word putra, Professor Hassan Abbas said something. So the putra in Sanskrit is found as putro in Old Persian. And this is because when we found the conjuncts of when we found the conjunct of ro and to becomes tha, which we denote by theta of so in Old Persian, as it is visible in putra. It later converts into sa, and sa changes into ha. Other examples of this phenomenon are three. For instance, three becomes three, and after that it changes into sa. So say is actually tre. I mean, it is closely related to three. Mitra vino, mitra, and mehr. Before it changed into mehr, it might have been misra. So we don't find it, but it is. It can be constructed. Martya. This is a Vedic word, and in Avesta, in Old Persian, we find it mashyo. And chitra is a interesting word. Chitra becomes chehr, chisra. It might have been chitra, and after that chisra, and after that chehr. So manu chehr is there, is a word there. Chehra. And in Vedas also, chitra. In modern Hindi, we find the word chitra to mean a picture. But in Vedas, chitra means chehra. So the study of Old Persian and Avesta languages is very, very important to unleash the meaning of even of the Vedas. So pur and pur and pisar, two forms are still in use in Persian. Pur, before it changed it to pur, it must have been puhr. And ha, as ha got deleted, following the law of compensation, there is a law of compensation in prakritization. The short pu may have been elongated to pur. So shahpur and other words we find. The word for grandson, napat, is especially used in Vedas. So we don't find it in classical Sanskrit. It is naptar in classical Sanskrit, and it is found in Old Persian, it is found as napa. So the last ta is deleted, and the deletion of the last consonant is also a very important feature of prakritization. Again, so in classical Sanskrit, its presence is in the form of naptar. In the Vedas, it is used with similar connotation of a descendant and offspring. For instance, several Vedic words are there. Apam napat, for instance, the offspring of the water. Up is water, that is ab. Urjo napat, the napat, the nabir, that is called nowadays in Persian. So urjo napat, divo napat, vimucho napat, etc. Sanskrit grammarians provide its etymology as na, but Panini also has enumerated this word as nabhran, napan, naveda, na satya, namuchi, nakul, nak, napunsak, nakshatra, nakranakeshu prakritya. A long aphorism he has composed. Besides tad, we find another pronoun in Sanskrit called tyad. Nowadays, in classical Sanskrit, we find only one pronoun, that is tad, but in Vedas, we found another one, that is tyad. Both denote the same meaning. Panini has enumerated is in tyadadi, and in Old Persian, but in Old Persian, we found te and tya both. And in Vedas also, we find tyad. For instance, in the mantra, that is very popular mantra, udutyam jata vedasam devam vahanti ketavah Drishe Vishwaya Suryam. Another word is shab. For instance, rozo shab, which is used in modern Persian, it was kshapa, and in Sanskrit it is kshapa, as you can see here. In Old Persian, we encounter the word kshapa. Athahiyas kshapava, for instance, Bihistun inscription 1 7. The Sanskrit, there's a very interesting word, dost, which stands for the term friend. The Sanskrit word just is its homogeneous word, and its Old Persian word counterpart is zausto. So job, if you see the affrication, if you add affrication to ja, it becomes z. See, for instance, ustad and ustaz, two variants are there. So ustaz is nothing but the affrication of ustad. So if you see the affrication, it is the. This Sanskrit word is grammatically derived from the word root jush. Jushasva somam, for instance, in Vedic Sanhitas, which means to serve or to make happy. So it is our dost is that who makes us happy. Dostan baushad ki girat daste doost. So in another word is starak, which in Middle Persian is found as sitare, and after the processes, it becomes istare. So we also find the istare, and in modern classical Persian poetry, we even today they use it. For instance, Rumi says that mah garche shavad lagar istare nami gardat. In Sanskrit, it is found as tara, used distinctly with feminine gender. Further, in both Sanskrit and Old Persian, we have a word having almost similar sounds, that is stuna and sthuna, which means a pillar. In Middle Persian, after undergoing the process of prothesis, the word has transformed into istun, whereas in modern Persian, we see this with an anaptixis after sa as sutun. In Sanskrit, besides thuna, another variant sthanu is used. So, Darkhanei ki sakf nadarat sutun mabash. Sutun is also there. In sutun, we find the anaptixis. And in istun, we find prothesis. The Old Persian daru is dar. I know that time is very short. Aziz bhai, aap mujhe batayega.
Please continue. We are all learning something, so please continue.
Thank you, sir. In Old Persian, daru is used to denote wood. Sanskrit has a similar cognate daru. This word is still in use in modern Persian as dar, but it means the guillotine, the phansi ka takhta, possibly because in ancient days it was made up of wood. Sanskrit bhumi is seen as bhumi in Old Persian. In Middle Persian, it is found as boom. In modern Persian too, it is visible, but not as a distinct word. It is found in compound status. So our asatids are there. They will correct me if I'm wrong. So Zad boom is there. Zad boom is motherland. And Navya is a word in Sanskrit, which means the water body which can be navigated. Panini formulate a sutra for that. Nau and Nauka is a crude form of this word, which means a boat. In Persian also it is there. From Nau, we find a word Navya. Nau vayodharam vishmul mul sita tulabhyas tare tulya prapya vadhyanam me samasamita sammiteshu. This is a long sutra, has aphorism formulated by Panini. And related to this Navya, we find in Old Persian Navya. That also, it is semantically equal. Droh is draug in Old Persian. Now, very important thing, an interesting thing, sacha is there in the Vedas. It is an indeclinable. Indeclinable are the words which don't decline. There is no declension of these words. So avyaya, which is called in Sanskrit. So sacha is an avyaya, which is used in the Vedas. I didn't find in classical Sanskrit. It uses the words of, it adds the sense of ablative case to the word to which it is added to. So it is found as hacha in Old Persian. It adds the sense of ablative case to the word before which it is used. In Old and Younger Avesta, this word is found as in identical form. In Pahlavi, it is found as hach, and later in modern Persian, it is seen as az. So, the interesting thing is that in Vedic mantras also, it is used before the word. So generally, our Shinasehai Sarfi are used after the word, but Sacha, just like in the Vedic mantras, is used before the word. So as khanemi ayam, as khanemi ravam. So serving the semantic function of the ablative case. For instance, hacha paruviyat, sacha purvata. These are from Behistun inscription. This indeclinable is hardly seen in classical Sanskrit, but in Vedic Sanskrit, it is used in abound. So, for instance, Tadvo Gaya Sute Sacha. Sacha you can see here. Puruhutaya Satvane Sham Yadgavena Shakine. So, the indeclinable abhi means towards in Sanskrit. And it is equally interesting, like Sacha. It is generally used to denote the sense of accusative case. In Old Persian, this indeclinable is used as abiy. For instance, basta anayata abiyamam. Baadh karke usko lao mere paas. Baddha aniyata abhimam. So this same declinable may have been converted to be in modern Persian, where it is frequently used to denote the accusative case, bekhane miram, for instance.
Dr. Saab, you can continue till 3:30. You have 10 minutes, less than 10 minutes left.
Okay. Saha is an indeclinable in Sanskrit, meaning with. In Vedas, we find the word in its primitive form, sadha. So, sadha is used in Rigveda, but in later Sanskrit, which is called classical Sanskrit, we don't find sadha, we find saha. So what is the difference between sadha and saha? The difference is that in the stop element of the, which is the, actually, that got deleted, and what we find is saha. Panini records two words where sadha instead of saha is used. Sadhamadas thayosh chandasi. Elision of the stop element from the has made it to change into her. But in Old Iranian, the change is in other direction. And that direction is, unlike this case, we come across a tendency of inaspiration or de-aspiration of, so dha is aspirated sound dha, which is not there in any of the Iranian languages. So dha becomes da. For instance, Bharat, if they, even today, Iranians do not cannot pronounce it. So of the aspirate sounds, thus the word is found as hada in Old Persian. So this hada indicates sadha, which is not preserved even in classical Sanskrit, but it is preserved in Old Persian. So the study of Old Persian and other Iranian languages are very important, rather essential to know not only the Sanskrit, but our scriptures, our Vedas, the most ancient languages of Indo-Iranian. Now, these were some examples of lexical similarities. We similarly can see the morphological similarities. We don't have enough time, so the declension, shabdaroop jise kehte hain, we can see the declensions the nominative, there are 8 cases in Sanskrit and Avesta and Old Persian, all these languages. So you can see nominative cases. The first case, Dara Yavahu, which is Dara, and Putra is Putro. And again, this Putro is the process of Prakritization, because in Prakrit we do not find Visarga. This is called Visarga in Sanskrit, but except Sanskrit, no language has been able to preserve this archaic sound of Visarga. Even in Pali, even in Prakrit, we do not find Visarga. Similarly, we do not find Visarga in Avesta or in Old Persian or in Middle Persian. So it becomes O. In Sanskrit also, in Pali also, it becomes O. For instance, Buddha becomes Buddho, Putta becomes Putro, Putto, sorry. Martya becomes Masho in Old Persian. The accusative case is Dvitiya Karak, which is Karm Karak, Bhagam is Bhagam. Instrumental is the third, which is Rochibhi is Rauchibish. Again, you can see that this Visarg is not there. Visarg has been changed to Sh. Genitive, you can see interestingly, because it is the same, only Sa becomes Her. Arsham is a king who is perhaps the father of Darius. So Arsham is Arshamasya is Arshamahya. Kuro is Kurosh. Locative also you can see. In pronouns also, Aham is Azam ya or Adam in Old Persian, Azam in Avesta, Asmakam is Ahmakam, Vayam is Vayam. In conjugation means the Dhatu Roop, the verbal forms also you can say the immense similarities both languages bear. Adhari is Adari, Abhavam is Abhavam, past tenses. Present also Smasi. We don't find Smasi in classical Sanskrit, but Smasi is there in Vedic Sanskrit and in Avesta and Old Persian, obviously. Smasi is Smaha in classical Sanskrit, but Mahi is in Old Persian. Asmi, these things are present tense, the instances of present tense. Krinosh is Kunavahya, Praihi is Perediya, Krinot is Kunaut Tav.
Professor Saab, I think Professor Bilqis Hosseini wants to ask a question. She has raised her hand. Ma'am, do you have something to say? I don't think so.
I have to learn a lot.
Please continue. Please continue.
Okay, thank you. So, I am concluding it. There are so many things left. For instance, secondary nominal bases, which is called tadhit in Sanskrit. So secondary nominal suffixes are generally derived from verbal derivatives. Both Sanskrit and Old Persian share several types of these kinds of bases. A few of them are discussed here. I will be discussing. So suffix ko is there. And ko has so many shades of meaning, and all shades of meaning is preserved in Persian. This is a strange thing. For instance, Ari is a foe, enemy, and if you add ka to that, it becomes arika, and it yields the same meaning. So this ka is widely used in almost all Indo-Iranian languages and even in modern Indian languages with several senses to denote. Some of them which are common is as arika. So this ka in later development changes into ga and thereafter into ha. For instance, bacche. But if you make a plural of it, it becomes bacchegan. तो ये गौ कहाँ से आया? बच्चेगान में गौ actually वो ह जो हुआ है बच्चे में, that initially was ka. we still witness this suffix in plural form. Towards the conclusion of this paper. So while discussing Sanskrit and Old Persian, it should be borne in mind that regarding the correct reading of several inscriptional words, instead of dausta, Tolman in his lexicon reads it agarta. Similarly, instead of putro, some scholars read pusso. In spite of these readings, from the above discussion that Old Persian language bears affinities with Sanskrit to the extent Avesta does. Old Persian Vedic model feature of Old Indo-Aryan, which we seldom finds even in classical Sanskrit. These Old Iranian usages may assist us in determining purport of the mantra at many occasions of the Vedas. For instance, the word dasyu, which means dacoit in Sanskrit, but it can also mean desh, country or region, because it has been used in Behistun inscription in this meaning only. Besides this, we find the Sanskrit asan, which is the past tense of
That's
us.
1 minute remaining.
Sure, I'm just concluding it, sir. Pointing the fact that the root as might also have been used in Atmanepada, which now is not in vogue in classical Sanskrit. Rish Gatau is a root which in Sanskrit is only found in verbal derivatives, which is primary nominal basis. For instance, Rishi, and hardly seen in verbal conjugations. But in Old Persian, we find the conjugation means verbal forms of this root used. For instance, Adam Arsham Adam. Aham Arsham Madam. Aham Arsham Madam means I went to media. Thus, the comparative study of both languages would be very helpful in achieving comprehensive linguistic understanding of both the languages. In the end, I thank all my teachers from Delhi University, Persian Department, Professor Chandrasekhar, Professor Hussaini, Professor Rajendra Kumar, and others, who introduced me to the mesmerizing world of Persian poetry and Persian knowledge base. I especially thank Dr. Anjali Duhan, my colleague at IIAS Shimla, for her valuable comments on the earlier draft of this paper. And thanks all. Dhanyavad.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shukla. It was a brilliant paper, but we hope we would have had more time for you to present it in detail. And there can also be a conference or a seminar regarding the same. The topic that you discussed can be discussed in the form of a different seminar.
Very well done, Shukla. Many
Thanks a lot, sir.
Many contributions.
Thanks a lot, sir.